I think most people know exactly what New York values are.
I am from New York.
Well, you're from New York, so
yeah.
You might not. But I promise you in the state of South Carolina, they do.
Another day, another GOP primary debate with Donald Trump center stage. So how'd the candidates fare without self-described libertarianish Senator Rand Paul in the mix anymore? Pull up a seat and take a load off, because we've watched hours of this stuff to distill down for you only the best and worst moments of the South Carolina GOP debate.
Listen, there's a real difference between Marco's tax plan and mine. Mine gives every American a simple, flat tax of 10%. Marco's top tax rate is 35%.
Americans hate the tax system, and most mistrust the IRS, so it was refreshing to hear an actual substantive discussion of tax reform from many of the candidates.
I'm not going to have something that Ted described in his tax plan. It's called a value-added tax. It is a tax you find in many companies in Europe, where basically businesses now will have to pay a tax both on the money they make, but they also have to pay taxes on the money they pay their employees. And that's why they have it in Europe, because it's a way to blindfold the people.
Even Ben Carson shook himself awake long enough to point out that taxation tends to hit the poor far harder than it does the wealthy.
Every regulation is a tax. It's on goods and services, and it's the most regressive tax that there is. You know, when you go into the store and buy a box of laundry detergent and the price has gone up, 50 cents because of regulations, a poor person notices that, a rich person does not.
I would certainly start taxing goods that come in from China. Who the hell has to lose $505 billion a year?
I'm sorry, sir. Donald Trump did what Donald Trump does best, bluster against China.
I'm a free trader. I believe it. But we have to be smart, and we have to use smart people to negotiate.
But some candidates on stage pushed back and pointed out that tariffs don't just punish our supposed enemies, they punish American consumers.
I think we need to be very careful with tariffs, and here's why. China doesn't pay the tariff. The buyer pays the tariff. If you send a tie or a shirt made in China into the United States and an American goes to buy it at the store and there's a tariff on it, it gets passed on in the price to the consumer.
There'll be retaliation.
Yeah.
You think that the Chinese, if they had a 45% tariff imposed on all their imports, wouldn't retaliate and start buying Airbus? Of course they would.
The military is not ready either. We need to rebuild our military, and this president has let it diminish to a point where tin pot dictators like the mullahs in Iran are taking our Navy ships.
Republicans always talk a big game about cutting spending, except when it comes to the military, and this debate was no different.
If I'm president of the United States and Congress tries to cut the military, I will veto that in a millisecond.
Remember, this is despite the fact that the U.S. spends more on its military than the next 7 nations combined.
I will gladly accept the mantle of anger.
There's nothing Donald Trump can say to shock anyone anymore, but doubling down on his all-out Muslim ban was a particularly shameful moment in this debate.
Is there anything you've heard that makes you want to rethink this position?
No. No. And I have many great Muslim friends, and some of them, I will say not all, have called me and said, Donald, thank you very much. You're exposing an unbelievable problem.
We should put the NSA in charge of the civilian side of this as well. That expertise needs to spread all across the government.
Without Rand Paul's dissenting voice in the mix, the national security portion of this debate quickly devolved into an NSA love fest.
What we want to do is to control this. We also want to dominate this from a commercial side.
Edward Snowden is a traitor, and if I am president and we get our hands on him, he is standing trial for treason.
This president doesn't enforce the marijuana laws in this country because he doesn't agree with them. And he allows states to go ahead and do whatever they want.
Beyond the usual war on fill in the blank.
We have a war on virtually everything: race wars, gender wars, income wars, religious wars, age wars. Every war you can imagine, we have people at each other's throats.
This debate saw an especially chill wind blowing through the battle planes of local law enforcement.
There's a chill wind blowing through law enforcement in this country.
The police are the most mistreated people in this country. I will tell you that. The most mistreated
Despite FBI statistics showing the police have never been safer in history. Agree? Disagree? Just don't care? Let us know in the comments.